Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'm using some new products from scrapbook.com. They just released their fun nature borders. This set is perfect for creating some fun background scenes. I'll also be using their little Lovies die set. Now this one's not new, but I thought the little bear would look perfect on the background scene I create. Instead of pattern paper, I'm using the new Rustic Duo Smooth Cardstock paper pad. I'm showing the A2 size, but it's also available in 6x8. And for a sentiment, I'm using the Wordfetti Sunny Days stamp set. I selected one of the light blue colors from the new Rustic Duo paper pad, and I'm using that for the background, so this will be the sky. I'll put adhesive on the back, and I'm using scrapbook.com's deluxe adhesive roller. Now this stuff is super sticky, so once it's down, that paper is not going anywhere. I've already die cut the pieces for the scene, and I have them in scrapbook.com's small stack and sort tray. I use the Rustic Duo cardstock for all the pieces except the clouds. For that one, I use some white cardstock. I'll be doing some ink blending on most of the die cut pieces, so I grabbed scrapbook.com's magnetic glass mat. To hold the ink pads in place while I'm ink blending, I'm using the MagInk Tray from Glassboard Studio. And since they don't have a square size to hold the Distress Oxide inks, I have my little fix adding one of their MiniPawn Magnets. And it works so I don't have to hold the ink pad while I'm ink blending. For the two mountain pieces, I use two different shades of brown cardstock, but I'm using the same ink color, Distress Oxide Vintage Photo. And I'm just adding the ink along the top edge and a little more at the mountain peaks. So I'll set that aside and work on the tree piece. The ink color I'm using for this die cut is Catherine Pooler's Cargo. It's a really dark green with a hint of brown in it. I'm adding a bit of ink along the edge of all the trees. Whenever I ink blend, I first wipe off a little bit of ink on my mat. That way, if my ink pad is super juicy, I don't accidentally ruin my die cut piece. And when I need a little more ink, I will pull from that section on the mat first before grabbing more from the ink pad. Before I move on to the grassy hills, I'll quickly clean up my magnetic mat, just spraying it with water, then wiping it clean and dry with scrapbook.com's Crafty cleanup cloth. For the two hill pieces, the ink color I'm using is Distress Oxide Peeled Paint. And I'm adding it just along that top stitched edge of the two hill pieces. I'll also be adding a sun, and I cut this out using scrapbook.com's nested circle die and some of the yellow cardstock in the Rustic Duo paper pad. Since most of the sun won't be visible, I cut it in half so I could use it on a second card. I am adding a little bit of ink along that edge, using Distress Oxide Scattered Straw color. Now I'll clean up the mat and start assembling the scene on the background. So I'll grab my blue sky on the card base, and I'm starting with the cloud at the very top. I'll put the sun behind the clouds on the right side. So on the back side of this cloud border piece, I'll add a little bit of glue, then add the sun. Now I'll put more glue on the back and add the cloud border at the very top of the sky panel. And it will be flush on the right, left side, and the very top. What's really fun about the new nature border die set, you can use them for vertical or horizontal cards. I'll press down firmly on the cloud border, making sure all the edges are adhered down. Next, I'll add the two mountain borders. I'll add the darker brown mountain piece down first. I'll put glue on the back, adhere it on the card. And with all the different border layers, you don't need to cut a full piece, so those mountain pieces, you can see the cardstock piece doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the card. That way you can save some of your cardstock or use up some of the scrap pieces you have on hand. Now I'll add the lighter brown mountain piece, and I cut it so the peaks will go between the darker brown peaks. The next layer is the tree line. I'll put glue on the back, adhere it underneath the lighter mountain peaks. And when adhering it down, I'm making sure those trees are low enough so it doesn't look like they're taller than the mountains. So just two final borders to add, the two hills. So the first one, you'll only see a tiny bit of it. It dips down in the center and it has that higher curve on the right and left side. I'll add that one down first. And then the final hill in the very front just has the one curve and it's a little higher on the right side. So there's the background of my card with this fun mountain scene. Super easy. I did notice a little bit of the darker brown cardstock peeking out on the edge. I'll simply flip over the card and trim off that area with a pair of scissors. So now it's time to assemble this sweet little bear. I've already die cut out all the pieces. I will be adding a little bit of ink along the edge of the bear's head and body. So I'll grab my MagInk Tray and the Distress Oxide Vintage Photo Color. On this main shape of the bear, since I'll be adding the individual headpiece on top, I don't need to worry about adding any ink in that area. And then on the head, I'll add ink all along the edges, putting a little extra at the top and the ears. So that'll be the last of my ink blending for this card. I'll set aside the MagInk Tray, my ink pad. I will clean up my magnetic glass mat before I start adhering the bear pieces together. There are some tiny pieces for the bear, but overall I think it's pretty easy to assemble. So I'll start by attaching the individual headpiece on the very background of the bear. And I love how the die cut pieces have that fun etch detail. The brown colors I use for the bear are from scrapbook.com's Neutral Smooth Cardstock paper pad. I have the lighter brown for the main body and the head of the bear, and I used a darker brown for the muzzle, inside of the ears, and bottom of the feet. For the bear's eyes and nose, I used black cardstock. And to help adhere all those small pieces, I'm using scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. I'll first add a small drop of glue, then I'll pick up the die cut pieces using the wax tip end. This tool makes it much easier to pick up those teensy tiny die cut pieces. It's also great for adhering embellishments like sequins or pearls. This is a 4-in-1 tool, but I use the wax tip end the most. I have just one final inside area of the ear to attach, and then this bear is finished. Super cute. I'll also be adding some pink flowers, and I use yellow cardstock for the centers. And the pink and yellow cardstock are from the Rustic Duo paper pad. I'll add that small drop of glue and pick up those tiny pieces with the Craft Pro Pick tool. Before assembling the rest of the card, I'll set aside the magnetic glass mat. The flower dies are from scrapbook.com's Spring Treat Box add-on set. There are 3 different styles of flowers on this set. I will use a white gel pen and add a teeny tiny dot in the center of the bear's eyes. I think just that little detail adds a lot of life to the bear. Now before I add the flowers and the bear, I need to work on the sentiment. I already have it set up in my mini MISTI. The sentiment I'm adding is "You're amazing." Now the stamps, those are 2 individual words, so you want to make sure to get them lined up perfectly together, or you could do them individually and cut them out separately. I'm stamping the sentiment on the same light green cardstock color I use for the 2 front hills of the card. And the ink color I'm using is Honeybee Stamps Intense Black. I love using this for sentiment, gives a nice clear detail, and it dries quickly. Now I'll grab my paper trimmer and cut out the sentiment. I'm using Tonic Studios Maxi Guillotine Trimmer. I have the older version. The new version is a different shade of gray, and instead of orange, it's black. So there's the sentiment all cut out. I'll grab my card, the little bear, and the 3 flowers. I will be popping up the bear using some foam dimension. I'm using the small foam squares in the 1 millimeter thickness behind the bear's body, but behind the head I am using the 2 millimeter small foam squares. And that'll add just a little extra lift to the bear's head. I'll remove the release paper and add the bear in the lower right-hand corner. And I'm positioning him so his head is between some of the taller trees. Next, I'll add the sentiment on the left side of the bear. Put glue on the back, adhere it down, and I'll make sure it's on nice and straight before that glue dries completely. Then finally, I'll add the 3 flowers. I'm putting 1 in the lower left-hand corner and 2 in the lower right-hand corner next to the bear. So there is my finished card. This one was so much fun to make. I love the new nature border die set. And since I can never stop at 1, I did make 2 using this design. On the other card, I did use a black pen and trace the mouth of the bear so it stood out a little more. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.